Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. I am Corey Anderson, president of the user group, and I'll be your host for the meeting today. First of all, we'll start off with our agenda. This is our agenda for today. We have a welcome and our general business. We also have a section for member announcements. So this section is designed for anybody that has a job posting or is looking for a job that is NetSuite related. Or anything similar to that. We'll give you a chance to speak up and make an announcement. You can also post an announcement in the chat window throughout the meeting if you have any job-related announcements. After that, we're thankful to our Celigo meeting sponsor today. Thank you to Celigo, and we'll hear from them for about 10 minutes about what they do and how they can help with your NetSuite. And then we have scripting for non-scripters, our main presentation today. That'll be presented by Mike Kachline of Vertafore. After that, our tips and tricks. That'll be about 15 minutes or so. We're going to hear from our own board member, Ryan Lungnecker. And then we have our open forum after everything is said and done. And that'll go as long as it needs to up until about noon Mountain Time today. Membership to the user group is free. You can register at rmnsug.org. Once you register, it ensures that you get notification of upcoming meetings and events. It also gives you access to our LinkedIn forum. So if you are not a member yet, please sign up today. Where you can find us, we have our website, rmnsug.org. We also have a YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube and search for RMNSUG or Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group, and that'll come up on YouTube. YouTube is where we host all of our meeting recordings, so including this one. It'll be posted on YouTube eventually, and we also have our meeting recordings and our slides posted on our website. I'll talk about that more in just a second. We also have our LinkedIn forum, and our LinkedIn forum is designed for our user group to interact with each other, it's where we post announcements about the user group. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's follow-up from any topics from the meeting, we'll use our LinkedIn forum for that. So this is our LinkedIn forum URL. I'll post that in the chat window here in a little bit, so you can go right to it. If you haven't been to that yet, you can go there and request access. Again, you do need to currently be a registered member of the user group to get access to our forum. So as I mentioned, all of our previous meeting recordings are on our website at rmnsug.org/posts. And then once you get to our website, there's a search box. Under that posts page, there's a search box where you can type in any topic that you might be interested in that's NetSuite related. More likely than not, we've done a meeting presentation on it in the past, and so we'll probably have something that pops up. We also have just a list of all of the meetings that we've done, starting from the most recent. And actually, I'm just going to switch over to our website real quick just to show you that. So here we are. Here's our posts page. This was our most recent meeting, customizing NetSuite, and then we can scroll down. You can download the slides from that meeting as well. So you can review everything. If there's any details that you missed or you want to review, that's always available. We have our one before that from Peggy, intercompany eliminations, and the slides. So anyway, you can go all the way back through, and everything that we've done since 2013 is listed in here. I didn't realize we've been doing it that long. That's 11 years of data of meetings that we have available on our website. So go check that out. I want to take just a quick minute to introduce the board. We are all volunteers to help maintain and keep this user group running. Thank you to all of our board members for everything that you do, day in and day out, year in and year out. Most of us have been on the board for many years now. There's one exception I'll tell you in a second. So that's me in the upper left-hand corner, Corey Anderson, the president. Then we have Margie Cominos, our sponsor and membership chair. She is from the PlantScan Corporation. Then we have our communications chair, Mike Kachline from Vertafore, our speaker chair, Peggy Evleth of RSM, our treasurer, Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting, and then our newest board member, Ryan Longnecker. He's our new events chair from Collective Mind Technologies. And this is a new role for us, and Ryan is going to help us make our in-person events better and more interesting, and do a lot more fun things. So again, thank you to the board for everything that you did to help keep this user group running. So as I mentioned before, here's an opportunity for member announcements. If you'd like to make an announcement, I'm going to pause for a minute. Feel free to unmute yourself. And again, this is for job announcements. If you're looking for a job or you have a job posting, you can go ahead and announce that right now. And if you're too shy, you can post it in the chat window, and you can also put it on our LinkedIn forum. So I'll pause for just a moment if anybody wants to make an announcement. Any announcements? Everybody's shy, that's okay. You can put it in the chat window if you want. All right, announcements going once, going twice. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. So evaluations, we do send out an evaluation survey. It'll be sent today towards the end of the meeting. Please take a few minutes to let us know how we're doing. We read and act on the feedback from those evaluations. If there's anything that we can do to improve, we want to know your opinions. And then we also use these evaluations to get ideas for new meeting contents. We have a kind of an ongoing list of recommendations for topics, and we always take these evaluations and add them to the list, and then come back and find new meeting topics as we go through our meeting cycle. So please take a few minutes to fill out that evaluation. It's really important to us. So as a reminder, please use the same email to RSVP as the email that you received the meeting invite. We try to maintain individual member records. We do have a NetSuite production account that we use, so we try and deduplicate member records. If you received an invite to the meeting with a different email address, please email rsvp@rmnsug.org to have the extra email addresses inactivated. And then also please provide the correct company name and which email should be inactivated. Meeting sponsorship. Our membership is free, as I mentioned, but the cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have our Suite App sponsors and consulting sponsors. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com. Consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. If you or your company is interested in learning more about sponsorship, you can go to rmnsug.org/sponsorship, and it has pretty much everything that you need to know about sponsoring on that page. CPE credits. We do offer CPE credits for our user group meetings. There will be polling questions throughout the meeting that you must answer to be eligible for the credits. You must also have registered for the Zoom meeting with your first name, last name, and email address. Also, make sure that your Zoom app is up to date for the polling question pop-ups. As we go through the meeting, the polling questions will pop up. It's a Zoom function. If the polling questions are not popping up for you, that means that your Zoom app needs to be updated to the latest version. So if you're having a problem getting those, you may consider logging out and logging out, upgrading, logging back in really quick, and then those pop-ups should happen for you. The CPE credits, they take 4 to 6 weeks to issue. We are coming up close to the end of the year, and I think there's a little bit of a leeway towards at the beginning of next year. I don't know the rules around that, but we're going to try and get the CPE credits issued by the end of the year for this meeting. This will be our last meeting of the year. And then also a huge thank you to Peggy Evleth and RSMUS for sponsoring the CPE credits. It is quite a bit of work for Peggy to process the CPE credits, and there's very strict requirements that we have to follow for RSM to sponsor the credits. So we really appreciate you taking care of that and all the work that you do for the CPE credits. Peggy, thank you.
Yeah, and I will be trying to get those out as soon as possible. As soon as I receive the stuff, I'm going to try to get the request into our CPE gods by the end of this week or early next week. But once I submit the request, it really is out of my hands. But they, at year end, they try to move stuff along. So please be patient and you will get your CPEs.
Sounds good. Thank you, Peggy. All right, so happy hours and our in-person events. We did, I think we did 3 happy hour in-person events this year. They were all very successful. Our most recent one was in October, had a great turnout, really great to see some old faces and meet some new ones. We do have some more events coming up in 2025. Having Ryan on the board with us as our events chair, and that'll be his main focus, is making our events better, more interesting, more exciting. We're going to hopefully try some new things in 2025 for our in-person events. So stay tuned for a meeting for those invites as they'll come out, and we'll announce it probably by January. We should know when our next planned in-person event is, and we'll announce that at our January meeting. So here's our upcoming meetings. We do have a pretty good schedule planned for next year, and I just realized it looks like it's a year of advanced topics, or mostly. So January, we have advanced safe searches. That is going to be presented by a speaker from NetSuite, and he is an expert NetSuite implementation person. He's actually wrote a book on doing NetSuite implementations, and that'll be on advanced safe searches. So that meeting, you'll want to have a little bit of safe search foundation, because we're going to talk about some really great advanced topics there. March next year, we're going to talk about advanced revenue management, otherwise known as ARM. And then May, advanced PDF templates. July, accounting spotlight. And then in September, we're going to have our inventory management. Then we'll have one more meeting in November next year. Not quite sure what that one's going to be yet, but that's our schedule for next year. So again, thank you to our Suite App sponsor today, Celigo. We're very excited to have you here. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and Karen to hear about Celigo. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and you can take it over.
Great, thank you. Right. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So quickly to introduce myself, I am Karen Stella. I'm the account executive here at Celigo. I have been with Celigo for 7 years. I also have Jenny Lawson, who will be assisting today to do a quick little overview of the platform, and she is a solution consultant. If you're not familiar with Celigo, we are an iPaaS, integration platform as a service. We like to consider ourselves an integration platform as a strategy. All right. We are the #1 global leader in NetSuite integration. So with our iPaaS, we are working with every type of company, whether it's big or small. We are vertically agnostic across all companies, working with software companies, e-commerce companies, service companies, you name it. There's no limitation as far as what our platform can support. And then same goes with applications. We are application agnostic. So the nice thing is as your company is growing, you can maintain all your applications on the same platform with using Celigo. It has very specific settings where you can actually have certain teams manage their own integrations if you'd like, or you can have that IT governance as well. And then if you're not familiar with the concept of iPaaS, it is quite different than a lot of integrations that you might be coming across. A lot of integrations out there are what we call like point-to-point integrations, where they've been built by coding, and then it's limited to what the specific integration is, whether if you want to customize anything or make modifications, it's quite difficult. You'll have to rely on a developer to do those changes for you, or continue to do manual processes. Also, a lot of the iPaaSes are more of like a legacy iPaaS, so we like to consider ourselves more of a traditional iPaaS. It's more modern. It was built both for the IT user as well as the business user, so it's very user-friendly, intuitive. System admin could certainly manage it, but yes, it still has everything that a developer would want to see in a platform. Also, we have a lot of functionality built into the platform that is quite advanced. Definitely our AI technology that's built in is a game changer. We did jump on that bandwagon long before it was the cool thing to do. So within our air management specifically, we've had AI technology built in back since 2019, and we've continued just to expand and add it in all types of areas throughout our platform to make life a lot easier for everyone. With Celigo, you'll definitely find that you will be able to get up and running much quicker. I'll go over it in a minute, but we do have a lot of pre-built solutions, which is specifically for NetSuite. A lot of them, we have hundreds of pre-built integrations for NetSuite that can get you up and running much quicker. We also have the ability to customize just about anything. So you'll definitely see a much quicker return on your investment. Also be able to get up and running quicker with more efficiency and less reliance on a technical team and developers, less resources required for that. We are proud to say that we were selected as NetSuite's Partner of the Year for 2024. We have over 5,000 NetSuite customers. We've been working with the NetSuite ecosystem for a very long time. So definitely when it comes to NetSuite, I would say we are best in breed. We have, as mentioned, those pre-built integrations that can get you up and running much quicker, built on best practices. If you're interested in seeing those, you can go to celigo.com and then click on our marketplace to see all the pre-built integrations that we have. All right, hopefully that gives you a little overview about who we are. I am going to hand it off to Jenny, and she's going to give you a little brief overview of the platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Bear with me, folks. There we go. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So hi, everyone. Good morning. As Karen mentioned, I'm Jenny, Senior Solution Consultant at Celigo. And today I'm going to give a brief kind of high-level demonstration of the Celigo platform, integrator.io, and show just how easy it is to integrate with NetSuite and any business application to drive automation across your operations. And in the spirit of today's session topic, I'll actually touch on how Celigo can introduce complex business logic through scripting and AI use. So let me go ahead and jump on in. Heading into the integrator.io platform, we start off on the homepage where you can see several integrations have already been built. These integration tiles on the page here are a visual representation of a collection of data flows. So in this case, we've actually organized each of these tiles based on a business process, like business analytics, marketplace integration, human resources, and IT, so on and so forth. Our interface here is also giving you a very quick and intuitive way to monitor, configure, manage the integrations of each of these business systems through things like color coding, where you can quickly see that there are successful connections made, or maybe a connection is offline. So very user-friendly. Here, clicking into the Rocky Mountain User Group demonstration tile, we find a data flow, also known as a platform flow, Celigo terminology, has already been configured and is successfully run between two systems. Data flow is effectively a process or sequence of operations that's defining how data is moving between the two systems. And when they're enabled, you're able to, when these flows are enabled, you're able to run them ad hoc within the Sligo platform, or you're able to schedule on a cadence, specific, whatever your requirements are, anywhere from once a week, all the way to a very specific cron expression where you're setting it down to every 5 minutes. In this example, we've configured a data flow to pull customer information from one system to create and perform updates to NetSuite, creating customers within NetSuite ERP. When I click into the data flow itself, you'll see there's two main components here, what we call a source system, as well as a destination, or in certain circumstances, you might have a lookup before you get to the destination. In this case, we're doing a very simple flow where in our source system, in this case, it is Shopify e-commerce, retail storefront. We're grabbing customer data and importing it to create customers within NetSuite. When I look at the export here, you'll see, again, very intuitive, easy to use. We have the export name. We're getting customers from Shopify. We've got these through this simple form, a very easy way to see the resource or the API in which we're making a call to Shopify, and the specific endpoint within that API with the action that we're taking. In this case, we're retrieving a list of customers. Here on the right-hand side, we can see a live snapshot of the data, customer data from our Shopify instance. So a really quick, easy way to reference what you're grabbing and use that downstream as you're building out any kind of flow. Now that we know what we're getting out of Shopify, extracting, we're ready to send it on to our destination, in this case, again, NetSuite. So clicking into the import here, you'll see we have our connection already established to a NetSuite instance. Scrolling down, you'll see that the record type we're creating, of course, it's a customer. You'll see a very intuitive, easy to use drop down of any kind of record, including custom records, should you have those configured in your NetSuite. A live kind of sampling of all the different records you were able to create in this NetSuite instance. The operation we're taking here is to add or update the record within that system. And it's cool to note that we have the ability to locate any existing records through use of handlebar expression, which we've configured here. In this case, we're looking for records based on email address. So if I already have that email in NetSuite, we won't create a new customer. We'll instead establish a link and push updates. Now that we have our destination, we need to map exactly where the data is going to go. So clicking into our mapping, you'll see here on the left-hand side, our source record field. These are all the fields within, well, a sampling of the fields within our Shopify instance. And here on the right, we can see the destination, the data fields in which we're going to be passing that information into the NetSuite instance. At the bottom here, I can easily add additional fields through a pop-up menu where I can set email and say pass it into alternate email. Additional functionality can be added on top for setting the type of field mapping. You could do a standard mapping, so it just direct one-to-one. You could do hard coding, you could perform lookups, you could do multi-field combination, lots of cool customization you can do through the mapping process. On the right, we see that snapshot again of the data as it came from Shopify. And when we hit preview, we'll see the output of how it's going to appear within NetSuite. Now, in the spirit of today's group topic, scripting, let's take a look at how Sligo can also assist with scripting logic, which is running between your integrated platforms. So as a delineation, scripting in Sligo is complementary to building scripting in NetSuite. The scripts that you can configure in Sligo are really designed to handle transformations, automations across your integrated systems. Whereas scripting in NetSuite is typically focusing on the business logic workflow automation within the NetSuite environment. So in this flow step, we're going to click into a data transformation where you'll see we have the ability to write a JavaScript function here on the right-hand side. In the middle, this is what the function output would look like once the script runs. This is what the data looks like before the script runs. And then the function output is what it'll look like after the script is performed. Now, I mentioned earlier, Sligo has the option to use AI. So if you are not a coder, like myself, I will admit I am not a coder, you're able to leverage Sligo AI in order to build a script. So for example, let's say I wanted to flag customers from my Shopify instance, if as a VIP within NetSuite, if their spending exceeds 10K. So I can easily prompt the Sligo AI. If I hit enter, we will see there a new script has been configured. Also using AI, I can have it explain this selection where it's going to tell us exactly what that script is performing. It's checking what the record total spend is it greater than 10K? If that's the case, it's going to apply the logic to tag VIP on that record. So using AI can help reduce any kind of manual coding effort and save time and improve efficiency across your organization. All right. So that was a brief look at SligoIntegrator.io and how we can simplify integrations with NetSuite, while also adding some really powerful business logic through scripting and AI. So we'd like to thank you, of course, for your time today. And as Karen mentioned earlier, we are very proud to be NetSuite Suite Cloud 2024 Partner of the Year. And we're equally as excited to be able to sponsor today's user group. So shout out and thank you to the RSM team. And to show our appreciation, and for anybody who's curious to learn more about Sligo, we're really excited to have this raffle offering. And we are offering 3 lucky winners a $150 Amazon gift card. So if you'd like, please scan this QR code, or let me see
did put
here.
the link there in the chat.
Perfect.
And
yes.
then also there is a question for you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a couple of them that just came in. One of them was, can you only do this integration with particular systems?
No. So I'll pop back in here. At Sligo, we actually have the ability for you to connect to any business application. So here we're seeing a snapshot of our Sligo app marketplace. And here in the drop down, as I scroll, you'll see we're able to connect to anything from a database, actually NetSuite and NetSuite Analytics Warehouse, to we have EDI trading partner functionality offering for connecting to your trading partners, B2B. But we also have a whole ton, over 500 different applications ranging from HR systems to order to cash systems like Shopify, marketplaces like Amazon, payment processors, you name it, you'll find that there's lots of connectors pre-built that really simplify the integration process within the marketplace. And then for anybody who's doing any kind of custom system, we also have what are called universal connectors, which you're able to leverage to build custom integration, any kind of homegrown system you might have built, FTP, so on and so forth. So we can support just about anything. Sky's the limit.
And then the
So
second,
hold on. I'm sorry. Hold on. Just 1 second. So sorry, Jenny and Karen, thank you so much for sponsoring. We do need to move on at this point.
Yes.
But
sure.
if you could respond to any other questions that come up in the chat window, that would be super helpful. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we'll just have
No
our
worries.
schedule to maintain. So thank you so much for sponsoring Sligo. We appreciate everything that you do to support us. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Kachline of Vertafore for our main presentation today.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks all. Thanks, Sligo. Yeah, we also use Sligo. It's quite valuable. All right. Let me do a screen share here. We are talking today. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. We are talking about scripting for non-scripters today. We've given this talk, or I've given this talk a while back, but this is kind of version 2. So from a super high level, this is what we're going to cover. So we're going to start with kind of the goals, the basic, the 5 whys, right? What is it? Why use it? Where do you find this stuff? And how do you start and stop it? Enable and disable scripts, permissions, and then a little about performance. So it's interesting. It's important to note that I am a developer. I just got to say that, like a computer science degree, did a lot of languages, still write code. Um, but this talk is not geared for developers. If you're looking to like, I want to learn how to code, you'll learn a lot, but nothing about how to code. This is really geared around if you are an administrator in a NetSuite system and there are scripts on your system and you've heard of these things and they affect your life, but you don't know anything about them and you're not a developer, you're just not going to know about them. This talk is for you. So the goal is to empower you to know what these things are, where are they, how to know what's running and all that. Okay, that gets us into CPE credit goals. The CPE gods ask that we do this, but also this is just kind of a recap of what I just said. All right, let's get started. What is SuiteScript? So I picked this out of the NetSuite help page. It's kind of long and wordy. I chopped off some of the wordy stuff, but it's basically a scripting language that supports procedural logic on both the client and server. We'll cover that, but server means it runs inside the NetSuite server. Client means it runs in your web browser, actually. And you can use SuiteScript to extend NetSuite and customize. My summary of all this is it's JavaScript code in NetSuite, and you can do just about anything you could imagine with it. Oh, there are caveats, and we will cover the caveats in the end. These caveats are very, for NetSuite developers, you deal with them every single day. But as management of a NetSuite system or administrators, you need to be aware that these caveats exist. And again, we'll cover these around the tail end of the talk. Okay, so why use SuiteScript? So we're going to cover in this talk these 5, what I would call top SuiteScripts. There's actually a bunch of different types of SuiteScripts, but these 5 are the ones that are going to change your life the most. Like if you see them in your system, it's probably going to be one of these 5. So we're going to cover these, the user event, SuiteLit client, MapReduce, workflow. We'll go into each of these in detail. But again, there's a whole bunch others. I don't mention in here RESTlet, which hopefully I'll mention a little later, but RESTlet is really valuable when you're using like a system like Sligo. All right, so let's get started. Probably the most useful SuiteScript type of SuiteScript in your system is what's called a user event, or we devs like to call them UE scripts. So if you hear, you're in meetings and you hear UE scripts or user events. And if you have a system where you are using workflows to trigger logic, you think of the word trigger, right? So like I want to open the record, and after I open the record, if the user picks this, that, and the other, and they click save, it should check this first. Anything that's kind of like if the user does this, then it should do that, is a user event script. So why would you use a user event script over a workflow? The simple answer there is it's way more powerful. The workflows are really geared in NetSuite around simplicity. You don't need to know code. You can do all things with clicky click, but they're limited. Workflows are notoriously limited in dealing with sublists. User event scripts, well, basically the sky's the limit. Like you can do anything. And this is where you would have you'd have your CFO say like, hey, so, if we click this and save that, if this is the case, can it go out and do that and send an email? And the answer is yes. You can with a user event script. So kind of some examples for user events. You've got, validating fields prior to saving. So we're going to get into the next script type that also does this, but user events, the validation would happen after you click the submit button. So, the user would put stuff in, they'd click submit, and then you could write custom logic that says, okay, I need to go look at these fields. The other things you can look at are other records, right? So you could say like, well, the user wants to add this customer record, but let me go look at this other, you know, let me go see if there are vendor records somewhere else based on name match, or again, sky's the limit on what you want. And you could come back and say, hey, you're adding as a customer, but I see over there it's a vendor. User event script would be good for that. Really classic use case would be sending an email after you save a record. So this would be, like you fulfill, item fulfillment is complete kind of emails, or maybe like sending in something related to a customer invoice. Again, sky's the limit. My goal here is to let you know that this capability is possible, and this type of capability would be a script called a user event. Custom sublists. So this is a biggie. We use this at Vertafore extremely effectively. My favorite custom sublist is what we call AR activity. So imagine looking at a customer record, and today NetSuite gives you the sales. I think they call it the sales sublist. But we have a sublist that a script dynamically puts the sublist in the view and dynamically populates the sublist. And ours, that for AR activity, it gives every single AR impacting transaction as well as useful, like if it's open and what's applied and not applied and color coding and all of that stuff. So a user event script can be used to paint things on the screen dynamically. I think that's the real high, and sublists are really effective. You can also put fields and things like that. And then the final thing about a user event script that is not commonly known or used, but is really handy, is if you want to, if you're using the advanced PDF rendering for, say, in our case, for invoices, printing invoices, often when you're putting together those PDFs, you'll find that you can only access so much data. Because you can only get to the data that was on the invoice, but you want the data from some other record and it's not there. So maybe I need to create a custom field and do sourcing. And no, just use a user event script. The user event will trigger right before the PDF render. It'll fetch all the data you want and then send it to the PDF render engine, and you can just use it right there. So that keeps from polluting your records with all these sourced fields that really you just want the source field for reporting purposes. All right, so that's the user event script type, probably the most important type. If you guys come out from anything here, that's the one. That one is very, very valuable. Second script is called a suitelet. Some of y'all use this. We use this at Vertafore quite a lot to drive business processes. So a suitelet is a script that you can create a custom screen or user interface that has a very NetSuite feel to it. And again, from a high level, you'll use these to drive custom business process. Like you want your AR team, in our case, to go through certain steps, and always those steps. A suitelet would be your answer here. We use them to, as examples here, sending ACH batches. We've created one for that. We use them for other purposes as well, but that's an example there. But again, if you have a business critical process that you want, quote unquote, a screen that your users always just go down that road, they can't deviate. And sometimes audit drives this, which is a big deal for us. A suitelet would be a good thing to consider there. Third script type that is very common is called a client script. So this can be confused with a user event a little bit. A client script affects how you work with a screen. So if you're on a screen, a client script is very real time. So if you, for instance, hit a drop down and pick a value, and then suddenly another drop down is now enabled, or the other drop down now its values are different depending on what you picked in the first dropdown. Chances are really good that's a client script doing that. So client scripts are useful as a, if you were talking to your developer and saying like, I just need it where when you pick this, then it does that, like right then and there, that's going to be a client script. Yeah. And these can be used in conjunction with Suitelet. So you can write a Suitelet, your custom business process screen, and then in the Suitelet, you can then additionally add client scripts, which do all the dynamic stuff real time. MapReduce. This is probably my second most favorite script. So for those of y'all, attending this call, this is a really important one. Extremely powerful script in NetSuite that I haven't really found a good equivalent in Salesforce. I'm sure there is, but this one's great. So MapReduce allows you to execute custom logic on a set of data, in particular, a really large set of data. So you can use a MapReduce, what we've commonly used it for is, go look at every single, say invoice line for the past year. And if you see this particular fingerprint, go do this other logic. Or the favorite one we've done recently is go get every journal created by the ARM module and line by line, and those journals can get really long. Look at each line in the journal and figure out where it came from based on the revenue element source and go populate a field on the journal so that we can run safe searches on it. MapReduces are really good for this kind of thing. Lots of data. You need to, and the data typically is driven, the data can be driven by a safe search. It can be driven by a analytics data set. Or if you know what you want, your developer might come back and say like, really, that'll be a sweet QL, SQL. These MapReduces are incredibly powerful for just if you think about nightly or scheduled batch jobs that look for problems or update data, MapReduce is the one. A real key about the MapReduce that makes it distinct and unique is it supports, and I don't have this as a bullet here, I think I got it later, but it supports multi-processing, so it can do work in parallel, which is really good. I'm pretty sure I cover this later in a different slide. All right, another SuiteScript type, which is worth knowing. So when you're, working to customize your system, which scripting is used to customize your system, you might find that you have a workflow. Again, workflows are usually really great for like approval workflows kind of thing. But you might find that you've created a workflow and it does almost everything you need, except there's just, one thing that you just can't do in the workflow. SuiteScript allows you to add just that one thing as a quote unquote action in the workflow. And that can really free you up as an admin, or just, as an admin, where you can be like, oh, I don't have to scrap the entire workflow and script the entire thing. Instead, I can just write this one tiny little script that does this one hard thing in the script and drop it into my existing workflow. And now my workflow is a lot better. So these are called workflow action scripts. We at Vertafore that we famously use it to allow for role-based approval workflows. It's been very useful. So just be aware that, oh, and you could call remote web services. That's probably not very common. Again, you've got stuff like Celigo to do that. But, you know, just be aware that you can actually write code to add very specific functionality into a workflow that you already have, or you can kind of supplement your workflows with scripting. And then other scripts. These are definitely worth mentioning because it gets a little confusing here when you read this screen. So there's a script called a scheduled script, and you might remember just earlier I was talking about MapReduce scripts that run on a schedule. So it would be very easy to be like, what's the difference between a MapReduce script and a scheduled script? There might be some nuances here, but my kind of interpretation of it is when NetSuite started, it was first created, there was no such thing as a MapReduce script, but they did have scheduled scripts. So in the beginning, there was the scheduled script, and these things still exist. They wake up on a schedule, and they also go through a whole pile of data, and they execute logic on the data. The scheduled scripts, though, are not multi-threaded. So they're, eh, if you needed to operate on a mass set of data, oh, and the scheduled script, yeah, no, that's right. If you needed to operate on a mass set of data, MapReduce is probably better. A scheduled script would probably be best if you needed a script that, wakes up every night and does one little thing, kind of a thing. A scheduled script could be really good for that. Um, so like something that just, I can't even think of an example, but if you just, I need to do this one little thing every single night, then yeah, schedule script. The other thing that you will find that your developers might do, and we'll get into this a little bit with limits later on, is schedule scripts are pretty handy to developers to task out work from user events or suitelets. So they have kind of, I've seen this trend where they're used for that often. There's a different kind of script called a mass update script. This one is a little bit the same way. You want to go perform logic on a bunch of different records. The mass update was kind of a day one script for for NetSuite. Um, Kind of superseded by the MapReduce with an exception that, NetSuite has this whole mass update screen. So there's a page called page colon mass updates, and it makes it really easy where you can create a saved search and you can like click little boxes and say like, hey, everything in this search result, just go change this to that kind of a thing. Mass update basically allows a user level to say everything in this saved search, go and run whatever the custom mass update logic-y thing is. So it could be useful for you, but I kind of consider it also superseded by MapReduces. Another script type is called a portlet. So for those of y'all who use portlets a lot, and I'm sure there's a couple of you out there who, you love the dashboards. You love like logging in and seeing that executive summary, or maybe your CXOs love those executive summary portlets, and they've been asking like, can't you make, a dashboard that just gives me this such and such number, or that gives me a graph that shows whatever, and you're like, no, because there's like three different records and I can't do the multi-level join, or you would know why. But you're like, the data's there, you know it, you just can't present it as a portlet. This is where a portlet script is your friend. So you can create a script that basically goes and gathers whatever data you want and then presents it in the form of a portlet. And those show up under the custom portlet section in the personalizing of your dashboard. And in the final SuiteScript worth mentioning, there are others, by the way, but we're not going to talk about them. But the final one that you need to be aware of is called a RESTlet. So a RESTlet is really useful if you want your NetSuite system to be kind of an API endpoint. But NetSuite already has an API, right? But it's very atomic in nature. It's very like NetSuite's native API is like, oh, you can, load a record or just kind of very NetSuite-y things. But if you wanted to present an API to the world that was more along the lines of, I want to go, fulfill this thing or complete this order, or I want to be able to do this business process. A RESTlet is what you're looking for there. So like we, on Celigo being our sponsor, we at Vertafore use RESTlets with Celigo. So they actually work really well together. where we have Salesforce, where Sligo pulls all the stuff out of Salesforce and sends it to our RESTlet. And our RESTlet then takes that data, and we have all this sophisticated logic of, well, if you get an opportunity from Salesforce, you need to go do this, all these different things and do all these validations. And it just very business-centric logic. So a RESTlet is really useful for that kind of thing, is what we have found. All right, so that's kind of the high level. Why would you use SuiteScript? So we'll have, I think we got 2 questions here. So Corey, take it away.
Okay, I'll go ahead and pop up our first question. All right, so the first polling question is launched. We'll give everybody a minute to answer. And again, this is for folks interested in CPE credits. And Mike, you'll give us the answer when we're done with the poll, right?
I can do that. Yep.
Okay, cool. About 20 seconds left for the first polling question. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'll share the results. And then, Mike, you can tell us what the right answer is.
All right, so which script type runs as a trigger when a record is viewed, created, blah, 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 deleted? That would definitely be a user event. So user events work the kind of the scripting version of a workflow, and there's also a kind of trigger oriented.
Okay, awesome. All right, and we have one more right now?
One more, yep, I think.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, so I'll pop up number 2. Hopefully this matches. Number 2 is right here. Can custom scripts be used to enhance NetSuite workflows? So polling question number 2. What does this get QR code?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Oh, so that's pretty cool. So I guess you can get the QR code and share that. I haven't seen that before. All right, 30 seconds left to answer the question. We're almost done there. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll, share the results.
All right, and yes, you can definitely use custom scripts to enhance your existing NetSuite workflows.
Okay. All right, and that's it for now, Mike, on the CPEs?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
All
the
right.
2 Ys. Let's see. Oh, hang on. Oh, this third one. Do you have the third one, Corey?
Yep, I have the third one.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
go pop that one up too.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do one more CPE right now. Kind of group them together. Could a script change one record after a different script is updated? For example, updating sales order after invoice has been modified. Yes or no?
While you're answering that, Mike, there is a question.
Oh, thank
Rob
you.
Lowe is asking, what is a scriptlet?
Durr.
So if you look in the chat window, he says, are you reading that or should I read it out loud?
Read it out loud. I don't see it quite
What
yet.
is a scriptlet? I've seen it in the NetSuite URL, but wasn't sure if it was tied to a particular script. I assume it is specific to a suitelet.
I probably I'm drawing a blank on a scriptlet. I would imagine it's
I
tied to a suite.
haven't seen that either.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. And if you're not seeing the pop-up for the questions, again, you probably need to update your Zoom app. So I would recommend logging out very quickly, updating your app and logging back in. And then you should be able to see the pop-up questions. I'm going to end this poll, share the results, and the answer is
The answer is yes. A script can definitely change an order or a record after you've changed a different record. Basically, scripts can do whatever you want them to do um, when you want them to do it.
okay.
So you could change multiple records. All right, let's keep going. All right, where are scripts? This is really valuable for us as admins because they'll the proverbial is like, what's installed on my system? I don't know. What's running? I don't know. Well, here we go. We're going to go into that. So the answer to where are scripts is really three different answers. There's code, script records, and script deployments. So we're going to cover each of those and why they're different and important. All right, first and foremost, code. So scripts are code. We all know scripts are code. Code is what, there's a little screenshot here. It's, a text file. You can edit in Notepad. Developers use usually things like Visual Studio to write it, but it's a text file at the end of the day. And quite frankly, these things sit on your file cabinet. In the file cabinet, there is a folder called SuiteScripts. That folder is typically pre-installed by NetSuite, and that is generally where you will find all of your script code. Within the SuiteScripts folder, you can and should create subfolders. I would highly recommend one subfolder per script type. Otherwise, you will have a folder with a whole pile of files in there, and depending on how the developer or developers named it, you won't know what's what. So code lives in the file cabinet. They're text files. It's important, I haven't mentioned this yet, but SuiteScript is written in the JavaScript language. So SuiteScript is JavaScript. SuiteScript has evolved over the years, actually. It started with what they called SuiteScript version 1.0. They moved to SuiteScript 2.0 and then to 2.1. And you will find in, I think, page general preferences, there's a setting where you can tell your system if somebody has written a script in version 2.x, then treat it like a 2.1 or a 2.0. So that the thing to know for you as an admin is 1.0 is completely different from 2.0, 2.1, and 2.x. If you have a bunch of 1.0 scripts and you say, hey, can you just do this, that, or the other, and your developer comes back and says, I'm going to have to rewrite this script, you're probably going from 1.0 to 2.0, and your developer's right. You're going to have to rewrite the script. Once you're in 2.0, 2.0 and 2.1 are very, very, very close to one another. There's some syntactical differences, but there's not a rewrite on those scripts. So just be aware that there are these versions of the script. I'm not going to get in the details of what makes the versions different. They are all still JavaScript though. So if you're hiring a dev for NetSuite scripting, you need somebody who's strong in JavaScript. Absolutely. Oh, Sue, what role is the SuiteScript folder? We're going to get into that later in permissions. Yes, we will get later in that in permissions. But basically, it's just a regular file cabinet folder. One other thing worth noting as an administrator or as an executive of one of these systems is that it is possible, and your more sophisticated developers will do this, they will write what are called libraries. So this is code where the same code is used by different scripts so that you can just write it in one place and the changes trickle up. Every developer does these. It's just a good idea, but it also means you could have this situation where your dev makes a change for one business purpose and it suddenly breaks a different business process or business process, probably because they changed the library and didn't realize the change would impact things. So code is in the file cabinet, the text files, JavaScript. That's high level there. All right. The next thing of like, where are scripts? This is the most important, by the way, really. This is your starting place, is what's called a script record. So in NetSuite, there's a bunch of different record types, right? You got vendor records and customer records and transaction records and all these things. Well, there's a record of type script. And you'll find them under page:\scripts. And when I get this page thing, by the way, is that means you can just drop that into global search and it'll take you right there. I think if you go through the menu bars, it's like customization scripting scripts or something like that. So the script record is really important. It is the place that you should go if you want to know what are all the scripts on my system. This is the place. A script record cannot exist without code. So to create a script record, you have to start with code. So you can't have a script record that's kind of orphaned. And a script record defines kind of a structure of what that code is intending to do. Because if you remember, code is just a text file, like sitting in the file cabinet. It's just text in the file cabinet. So the script record kind of reads through the code and figures out, oh, this looks like SuiteScript, looks like a MapReduce, looks like it actually reads the code to figure out kind of what it is. And in the screenshot here, this is an example script record. You'll see that, and this is kind of important later in the talk, it figures out what the script's kind of wanting to do. The other thing that the script record gives you is a link. I don't have it. Oh, it is here. Under the script subtab, it gives you a link to the file in the file cabinet. So if you want to read the source code, you go to the script record file and you click this link and you can read the source code. Unless, in this case, the script came from a bundle and they've locked the script, in which case you cannot read the source code. You just kind of hope it does what it's supposed to do. So that's the script record, best place to get everything you need to know about a script. And then finally, a script deployment record. So these are child records of a script record. So a script can have 0 or many deployments. You will find these as a subtab under the script record. And a script deployment basically tells you when this script should be running. So for instance, if you had a, for us, we've got the this thing that updates journal lines based on, ARM journal lines. We could have a two when answers. We could have a, well, I want to run this every night answer. And then we could have a, I want to run it whenever somebody says to run it right now, or what I like to call ad hoc. That would be two different script deployment records. Script deployments, I think we get into these a little bit later, but you can define the permissions that the script is allowed to have when it runs. Priority in CPU is a big deal that you can do under deployment. So the deployments are really like, when is this run, and kind of what permissions do you have when you run? How many CPUs am I going to allow you to use? Again, the CPU usage is only MapReduce. All right, and then deployed, which we're going to talk about a lot later. All right, some more CPE questions. Take it away, Corey.
Hear me? Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on number 4, CPE question number 4. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Of the choices given, what is the best starting place to find details about any script? About 30 seconds left for the CPE question. If you can't see the question, you might have to update your Zoom. Maybe the pop-up is behind another window on your screen. We have no control over this. Like, there's nothing that we can change on our side to make it work differently.
Double check and make sure you don't have a pop-up blocker on that's barring it.
Yeah, if you're in the browser, yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
All right. So what is the best starting place to find details of any script? The answer really is the script record. For those of y'all who answered file cabinet, I understand why, because, well, I can read the script and find out what it does. That is a true statement. However, the script record points you to the file cabinet for reading, but it also gives you details. It gets you to the deployments of like how it's run. It tells you whether it's a user event or a MapReduce. So really the script record is a really good starting place. Okay, I think, did I have another one? Yeah, I got another one here.
Okay, we'll do number 5. What programming language does SuiteScript use? CPE number 5. There's a question in the chat, Mike, if you want to address that.
Yeah, is the page scripted records? If I had a capital E, I'm sorry, E and D. No, we're going to talk about scripted records soon, Mike. So there is a page colon scripted records. That one is extremely important.
Yeah.
But page colon scripts is your list of all scripts.
Okay, about 10 seconds left for the CPE question. And we'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay, what programming language does SuiteScript use? It uses JavaScript. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. I might have to go a little faster. I didn't realize that. All right, here we go. So script execution, we are going to talk now about, so we know where the scripts are. Now we need to talk about, are they running and how do I turn them on? How do I turn them off? Permissions and the infamous script execution limits, which you really need to know about if you're designing these things. All right, here we go. Enabling and disabling. So how do you turn them on and off? I'll be real honest, there's a lot of different screens we'll talk about, but deployed, deployed, deployed. So there's this little checkbox on the script deployment record that I've got circled in the screenshot here that's checked for deployed. If you read the NetSuite help, it will clearly tell you if you uncheck this, it won't run. This is the way. So if you want to know if it's running or not, you go to the script deployment record and look for that checkbox. If you want to turn it off, you uncheck it. That's pretty simple, but it's also like, you got to know this. Like, this is how you turn scripts on and off, is the deployed checkbox on the deployment record. Different ways to do this. So you can do it on the deployment record. You can also do it in page colon scripted records. So Mike had made a question about this page. This page is actually really useful. One of the things you can do on this page is you can just check the little boxes just right in line there. A caveat you need to be aware of though with page colon scripted records is it only shows you user event scripts and client scripts. So if you're looking to turn off a MapReduce or a scheduled script, it's nowhere to be found on this screen. So again, scripted records, page colon scripted records, very valuable, where you can just, as you see in the screenshot here, you can just uncheck the boxes en masse. The really valuable thing about a scripted record that I don't really highlight here is that you can look at it on a record basis. So you can say like, I just need to know everything that's running on a customer record, and you can, in scripted records, you can pick customer record and see the user events and clients. Again, can't see anything scheduled. Yeah, so Tammy, I think I just answered your question. You can't see any background schedule batch kinds of things from this page. We're going to cover those pages soon. Priscilla, can you just inactivate a script? You can. Um, my understanding is the best practice is the deployed checkbox. Because if you left it deployed and clicked inactivate, I'm not quite sure what NetSuite would do. I think it'd do the right thing, but use deployed. Start with deployed. Scripted records. Here's another extremely valuable piece of knowledge here in scripted records, as you see on the screenshot. If you picked a record type, went into user event scripts, it's very subtle but very important. These user event scripts run in a sequence. So they run from top down as per this page. And this is the only place you can like determine what the sequence is or change the sequence. So what we found once at Vertafore, we had a bundle update come from a third party, and then suddenly like things just started breaking. And we're like, what is going on? And if you go into user event scripts, you'd find that like the sequence changed, right? So we had written logic, custom logic, but our code was executed before the vendor's code. So our custom logic got basically overwritten by the vendor's logic. So all we had to do is just flip the sequence of the two scripts and everything worked. Yeah, so Priscilla says they run taxes last. Decline scripts run in sequence. Jed, I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a good answer there. So somebody else will have to answer that if you do know that, because they're a little bit more asynchronous in nature. But do be aware, scripted records, these little clicky draggy things affect sequence. That can be a really big deal. So if you have a bundle update and things break, it might be this, especially if you have custom scripts. All right. Status. So this is a question that has not come up yet is, oh, well, can I just disable a script with a status? The answer is yes, but that's probably not the best way to start. So there is this field called status. It depends on which script type you're on. The status will either be testing and released, or it'll be testing, scheduled, not scheduled. So the real key thing here to know is that if you put it in a status called testing, it is not going to run for anybody but yourself. So that is really geared, and yourself being the employee record who is set as the owner of the script. So it is intended for developers who are writing scripts and testing the scripts but don't want them to go live yet. Personally, well, the other use that you have to use testing is to run them through a tool called Script Debugger, which hopefully we cover at the end. Otherwise, other than Script Debugger, I have not found a need for this status really at all. So you'll see the status. If you think of using it for enable, disable, I would not. I would use the deployed checkbox and just leave the status. Scheduled versus not scheduled is very important for MapReduces or even scheduled scripts. This is really confusing. If a script of type scheduled has a deployment that says not scheduled, it will not run on a schedule. And why would you do that? That sounds completely unintuitive. And the answer, which I kind of alluded earlier, is developers will do that to task out work because of script execution units, which we will get into a little later. So high level, the status has its purpose, but it's not really for turning them on and off. But yeah, if you think the script should run on a schedule, that status better say scheduled. That's another good take home there. Okay, so these were like enabling and disabling scripts for the slides we just talked about. So now we're going to talk about like how do you start these things? And you zoom out and you say, well, it depends on the script. So how are scripts started? So generally, scripts are either started on demand on a schedule. When I say on demand, I mean like somebody clicks a button or somebody says go run right now, which is this screenshot. Save and execute is on demand. Or anytime anytime a trigger happens, right? Like record is saved, record is loaded, something's printed. I think there's an item fulfillment trigger or something like that. Like there's different triggers. And then you have for restlets, if a call to your restlet comes, that will start a script, start the restlet. So user event scripts, how do you start a user event script? Well, it's a trigger, right? So now your question is going to be like, well, which trigger? Like I know there's a user event and I know it triggers, but triggers on what? Like I don't know. So go to your script record for the user event and you'll see under this scripts thing, there'll be these little checkbox before load, before submit, after submit. This gives you an idea of like, what is this user event? When does it trigger? So before load says like, the user is clicking to view a record, and before NetSuite paints the screen, it's going to go do all this logic. So if you were troubleshooting and you're like, man, my dev made this change and now it's like really slow, it loads really slow, it's probably before load, right? Before submit would be you've got the screen, you're in edit on a record and you change in the record, you click submit, and then it kind of does stuff, right? That would happen before submit, except before submit is before the record any changes are saved on this record, this logic will fire. After submit basically says the same thing. User clicks submit after changing a screen. It'll save this record and then it'll trigger this logic. Oh, by the way, these before submit and after submit, I haven't mentioned this. I think I had it. Oh, I do right here. The before submit and after submit actually trigger on CSV imports too, which is really super handy or can be really super annoying depending on how you want to look at it. So you can actually put validation code in user event scripts that fire for every row that's imported in the CSV imports. You can also override that. So so the advanced options, there's called, well, I think I got the screenshot here, run server SuiteScript and trigger workflow. So you can uncheck this box and those user event scripts will not run. There is a special permission to allow seeing this box or not seeing this box, so that could be helpful for you, but just be aware that is a thing. For CSVs, you can skip user event scripts altogether. There's not really a similar type of capability for the user interface. And then the final note here, the user events triggered from scheduled or MapReduce. So if you're running a scheduled script or MapReduce script, or even I guess a mass update, and it modifies a record, then that is a trigger, right? So if the record has the before submit or after submit, those triggers will run. So these user events are really powerful for enforcing, like if you want to enforce rules. Yes, and Mike, you are very correct, which I don't know if I had in here, but it gets kind of devy, but a user event cannot call a user event. So if you have, your customer record user event goes and changes the invoice record, because the customer user event changed the invoice user event won't run. It's dumb, it's a NetSuite thing, but your devs should be aware of it. Yeah, it's a thing. As an admin, it's okay to be like, whatever, I just needed to do this, and your devs will figure that out. All right. So starting and stopping map reduce script. So I want to go back actually. So starting and stopping user event, there is no starting or stopping user event. There is knowing how they're triggered and then undeploying them, right? So that's there is no like starting them, right? Because they're triggers. With the exception of this CSV checkbox, that is kind of a, dynamic, hey, don't run the scripts when I do this upload. Map reduces are different. So these generally run on a schedule. You can run them ad hoc. So if you want to run them ad hoc, you go to the script deployment, and there's the little save and execute option here. If you do not see this, it's probably because it's a status of scheduled. So if it's not scheduled, you'll see save and execute. So that's how you run ad hoc, a script deployment record. Or you can set the status to scheduled. There's this whole thing here. You can tell it when you want it to run and how frequently and all that. And then you save the script deployment and it will run on that schedule. As far as stopping, if you wanted to stop forever and ever, amen, that's really just deployed. There's some caveats here, but well, not really. If you just don't want it to run, uncheck deployed. If it is already running, that's what makes this really hard. If you have a MapReduce that's already running and you want it to stop right now, you're kind of in a bad spot. I hate to say it, but you are. Your best option, unless your developer has written some sort of stop flag, like custom code in there that says if I see whatever in the system, then I'll stop immediately. Your best option is going and typing crap in the source code, and eventually the MapReduce will see that there's crap there and it'll just die. Terrible, but if you're in that position, you'll know you're in that position. It's probably 10:30 at night and you're seeing a bunch of emails go out or something that you just want to stop right now. That's really your only option.
We have another question. If a map reduce
Oh, can be
script
triggered by,
yeah.
yes, it can. Yep. So so a button is generally, well, I do them through user events. You can do them through workflows, but yes, you can start scripts through buttons. And we have definitely done that at Vertafore. Another way to start and stop a MapReduce is this screen. So this is confusing, so I want to just make sure everybody's kind of clear on this. So there's a screen called MapReduce Script Status, and it's like, oh, cool, right here, there's a cancel and there's a link for cancel. I just click the cancel link. Yes, that will cancel a MapReduce that is queued up to start running, but hasn't started yet. But once these things start, the status will go into you'll see the status change, but you'll see cancel disappear. So it'll basically say, I'm running, and there will be no cancel link. That's where you have to go the nuclear option and hack the source code and hope it figures it out. It will figure it out eventually, but it's not instant. It's just hopefully something that NetSuite fixes over time. Starting and stopping scheduled, it's basically the same as a MapReduce, right? You got the save and execute, you've got the schedule and the status where the schedule, the deployed checkbox makes it where it just won't keep running. A custom stop flag, I do actually recommend these custom stop flags because they're immediate. The developer can write in the code in every loop and say, if this flag is set, I'm done. We definitely do that at Vertafore. It's definitely saved my bacon. And then scheduled scripts, you also have a page called scheduled script status, works just like the MapReduce page, same caveats, where you can cancel. Although I think somebody will have to tell me if you know better than I do. I think you might be able to cancel a scheduled script while it is running. So I think put in the chat if you know one way or the other there. All right. And then mass update scripts. I haven't talked too much about these because they're kind of like schedules and MapReduce. And if you're a developer, if you give them a choice, they're going to run a MapReduce because quite frankly, they're faster. But to run it, you go under a page called mass updates and it shows up under custom updates. So that's how you kind of start it. You can save the mass update just like a normal saved mass update. And then to stop it, of course, you can deploy it. There is in mass updates, and I didn't do a screenshot here, and I'm kind of going on memory, but when you start a mass update, if you go back to this page, there'll be a little link up here that says like running mass update or current mass update or something. I think you can click that to stop it. All right, Todd says you manually stop. disabling its scheduling option and manually triggering it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Suitelets. So suitelets are just a reminder, these are the custom screens. So how do you start a custom screen? The answer is when your developer sets it up, they will put here under links where it shows up in your menu bar. So the way to start a Suitelet is generally through the menu bar system. I think there is a way to do the you can do a page colon blah up in the global search as well. But generally, to start a Suitelet is you navigate to it and click it. To stop it, here's our old friend deployed. Our just nuclear option of hacking the code. Oh, I hope you never have to do this. Um, really, never do that. And then a custom stop flag again, which I would highly recommend. All right, CPU questions. Corey, you're on mute if you're talking. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. All right, let's get the next one pulled up. So we have question number 6 coming up, and where did it go? Here we go. Well, we'll go ahead and launch that. All right, CPE question is launched. What is the cleanest, most effective way to stop any script type from running in the future? About 30 seconds left for the CPE question. Almost there, 5 seconds. Go ahead and end the poll now, and I'll share the results.
All right, so the answer here is the deployed checkbox. A key kind of word here is any script. So the page MapReduce status or page scheduled status is only MapReduce or scheduled scripts, so not user events and restlets and all that stuff. Um, and the file cabinet adding junk is I'd call it the nuclear option. Like it just oh, only do it if you'll know when you're in that position. The script is running and emails are going out or payments are being made, and you need it to stop right now. Again, the way to keep yourself out of that position is a custom flag, which I would highly recommend. All right, let's see. Well, Rory says in UI, mass updates can't be stopped once they've started. Oh, okay. It's good to know. Let's stop the mass update. Sweet answers. Thank you, Rory, for the sweet answers. And Kim, are you planning to show basic script setup in this training class? No, in that I'm not going to walk us through creating a script or even script records. My goal is for you to be aware that those are a thing and those are essential. But I think if you're at the level of creating scripts, then that's kind of next level from this talk.
Mike, do you think right now is a good time for a break?
I probably it's right about an hour. Let's see, do we have a different CP? We have one or two more CPs? I can't remember. Let's finish
we
up
have.
this.
Is there another one right now?
There's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Let's just go ahead and pop that one up then. About 15 seconds left for the CPE question. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll
All
and
righty.
share the results.
Where can you find and change the sequence at which a user event or client scripts run on a given record? The answer here is scripted scripted records. So in fact, scripted records is the only place you can see and change the sequence of multiple scripts running on a single record. It's kind of the purpose of that page in a way. So definitely a very valuable place to go when you want to know what runs, but the only place to go if you want to know what runs before or after what else.
Okay.
All right. Oh yeah, perfect.
Oh, perfect. Sorry.
So let's do a break. Is it, I guess, Corey, 10 minutes? Is that okay? So in this kind of part of the talk, we're talking about how do we start and stop scripts. So we kind of talked about that, like what's enabled and disabled, and if it's running, or how do we start the script or stop the script. Now we're going to answer the question like, well, what's running? Which scripts are actually running right now or have run in the past? Like, has this script run? Very common question with scheduled scripts, right? Like, so you have the scheduled script, but is it actually running? And when did it actually run? You say it was supposed to run at 1 a.m., but did it run at 1 a.m.? So we're going to talk about these types of things. Again, very valuable. So what's running? All right, so very first part of what's running, probably the most important way to get this answer is what are called logs. So logs have been around conceptually since the dawn of time, basically since scripts started. It is a way where a developer, when they write the script, they can write a line of code that says, go tell the world that I'm here, that the developer can have the log say whatever you want the log to say. And they can put they sprinkle them through their code. And they categorize the log. So there's these little categories of like it's debug, which means like some technical detail. Audit log is intended to mean like, hey, I'm doing this business process now. And then there's like error logs, which is intended to mean like, um, there's an error. Somebody needs to pay attention to this thing. So when the developer writes their script, they put these logs in, hopefully, and NetSuite has a API where the developer can just say, hey, go log this message. And NetSuite has a record, naturally, called the server script log, that these logging entries go into a server script log. And then you as an administrator can go query these records just like you would search any other record in NetSuite, and you can start asking questions. So to find out what's running, really the best place to start is really if the summary is page:/script execution logs or page:/script logs. It gives you a screen that looks like this, and you can filter by the log level. I think over here you can filter by the script. This is a kind of a handy starting place. Personally, I use saved searches. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but if you were just getting started, this is a good like overview of like just what are all the things. The other place to get to logs is, and this as a developer I use all the time, is on the script record. Remember, the script record was the one place that you start to get all the things. Well, here's another example. So if you go to a script record, you will see a subtab called execution logs, and that will give you all the most recent logs for just that script and all of its deployments. So on the script record, you see the logs for that script and all of its deployments. Or you can click into a deployment and it's got a similar subtab, and you'll see all the logs for just that deployment. So where is that different? Well, if you had a script that runs at, say, 1 a.m. and 1 p.m., then if you looked at the logs from the script record, you'd see everything at 1 a.m. and everything at 1 p.m. But if you looked at the logs from the 1 a.m. deployment record, you'll only see the logs from the 1 a.m. It kind of filters out the 1 p.m. So as an admin, I would recommend just go to the script record and look at the logs. Generally, the very first thing I look at is, are there logs at all? Because if there's not, that may not have run. We're going to get in a little more detail on that. The other place, this is my go-to. I've got a slide on here, a really helpful tip slide, but is using a save search on records of type server script log. This is my go-to, honestly, to see what the logs are for a certain script or for all the scripts. The nice thing about this for admins is you can export it to CSV, and then in Excel you can start, do all your Excel magic, which a lot of you know a lot of Excel magic, to go filter out the logs and figure out if you see certain things. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier, but the log level is noteworthy. We're going to talk about these a little bit in limits as well. But again, your developer picks the level of the log, but the intention is that debug is like dev noise stuff that devs care about, nobody else cares about. Audit is really intended to be like, hey, this business process has started. And then error, which you'll care about as an admin, is hey, something bad happened, somebody needs to pay attention. Developers are generally pretty good at putting error logs in, but developers being developers, and I fall in this same boat. I certainly have in my career, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to log an error and then somebody will know about it. Well, nobody's going to know about it unless they create saved searches to look for that error. So you as an admin, when your developer tells you, quote unquote, I've logged an error, that means for you, you better go create a server script log saved search and search for logs of type error with whatever message they're talking about. All right. So logs, again, logs are probably the best place to figure out whether a script's running and whether it ran and what did it do. This is kind of my helpful tip here. This is like one of my favorites. I go to this one all the time. It's a saved search of type server script log. I always call it recent script errors. And it's really simple. It just, a filter of type error. And then in the results, I sort by the date in descending order. So the most recent error on top. So this search just searches all the scripts. Like, hey, I don't care which script. Are there any errors going on in my system at all? If so, what are they? Um, Cannot tell you how valuable this one is because, if you're running, if MapReduce is running and you run this thing and you see the same error happening like a bazillion times, all with a timestamp of now, you probably got some real problems going on. But if you see no errors, then you're good. So this would highly recommend this search. One case to note, which I have in the bullet here around results can go back approximately 30 days. This is I said in the, I think slide number 2 or 3 that you can do anything with scripts with caveats. So logging is a really big caveat. NetSuite is very, it does not keep logs very long. Let's just put it that way. So I think that the help page said 30 days. I don't really believe that. I think it's more around, so the question here is how long are the logs retained in your system? The short answer is not very long. My rule of thumb is 24 hours, honestly. So just be aware that logs are valuable, they're useful, but they don't stick around very long. So for instance, if you have a job that's running at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or like on a Saturday morning, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll just log in on Monday and pull the logs. Yeah, the logs probably they may not be there. NetSuite may have purged them. So I say 30 days here again. I think I picked this out in NetSuite support, but like I don't really believe it. My rule of thumb is 24 hours. If anybody else has kind of thoughts there, feel free to put them in the chat or a different experience. There is another caveat that if a script logs quote unquote too frequently or too much, I'm putting this in air quotes, and NetSuite does have a Suite Answers that gives you what too much means. NetSuite will automatically modify your script deployment record and basically tell it, I'm not logging debugs anymore. I'm only logging from audit, audit error, blah, blah, blah. So it is very possible that you would find that a a script is running on a schedule. You wrote a script to run on a schedule, and you look at the logs, and there's none. Like you're just not seeing any logs, but you're seeing that records are changing. Like it's running. You want to go look at the script deployment record, and if the deployment record says it's at like emergency level or something like that, then you go chase your dev, like, why did you change it to emergency? And they're like, I didn't do anything. It's because NetSuite basically got tired of you being super verbose in logging and just ratcheted it up. So as a developer, you need to make sure not to log all the things all the time. You really, my rule of thumb, especially with MapReduce, which is the most, you'll see this the most with MapReduce, is, each map or reduce section, sorry, I'm getting techie here, but each map or reduce, you just have one audit log that says, hey, I'm starting to process this invoice record because of this reason, and just one per row. And then let debug be all the noise stuff. But as a non-developer admins, if you see these logs ratcheting up to emergency level or something, you probably want to get to your devs and be like, hey guys, I can't see any logs because you're logging too much. So go take some logs out of your code. All right, so this is a good search. Highly recommend. Recent script errors. All right, so what's running? So we talked about logs. Logs cover every single script type, with the client script, I think, being the exception. I don't know if you're going to see logs for client scripts, but everything else on the server, you're going to see in the server script log. Definitely recommend using those to figure out what's running. But you can go to this screen, which we have seen the screen earlier in this talk, the page colon MapReduce script status. And you can actually filter this. I'll show the filter here. You can filter on, right here, the status of all. You can filter and say, only show me those that are currently running. And it'll filter the list to only the ones that are currently running right now. Again, only MapReduce. But these are helpful. We have definitely, on our monthly billing process at Vertafore, like I'm in this page all the time, which is like, why we're always trying to make it run faster, our billing process. And I'm on this page, and basically the question I'm trying to answer is what else is running? And so for MapReduce, this will give you that answer. You can see what is running, what MapReduce scripts are running right now. And then the concurrency, which I talked about a little bit earlier, but I'll talk about a little bit later too. But basically, when you buy Suite Cloud licenses, you get these processors. So if you were to filter on currently running scripts, you would want these numbers to add up to the number of processors you have. That way they're all running at the same time and not stepping on each other. That's kind of we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but this is helpful for MapReduce only. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot stop MapReduce. It's already started. So that's where that custom flag comes in, or the terrible nuclear option of hacking the script itself and waiting for it to hopefully see your change. Let's see, scheduled script, same thing, same page. We've talked about this page before. We were talking about it kind of with canceling, but for what's running, you can do the same thing. You've got this filter. Under status here, you can drop the filter down and say, just show me currently running, and it will show you all the scheduled scripts that are running right now. So that's handy. And then priority is helpful too, because it tells, if there's 4 of them running, but one of them's high priority and the others are low, chances are the low ones might not actually, they might be waiting on the high one. Like it kind of gives you an idea of like, what's running. Alrighty. Next CPE question.
Okay, let's get this one popped up here. This is number 8. We'll go ahead and launch the question. CPE question is up. About 20 seconds left for the CPE question. All right, we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
All right. Is it possible for a script to run and log nothing? The unfortunate answer here is yes. So native NetSuite will never log anything for any script, which is kind of unfortunate. Like it won't even log and say like, hey, just letting you know, this thing like started. Native NetSuite doesn't do that. So it is up to your developers to put log entries in the code. But wait, there's more. If your developer logs too many things, NetSuite will decide that you're logging too many things, and it'll start trimming down basically what the log level. So it'll say like, I'm seeing too many debug logs. I'm not logging any more debugs from you. And then if it's determines the same with audits, like I'm seeing too many audit logs, whack, I'm not logging any more audits. So if it goes up that chain, you could very well see no logs at all from your script, even though it is actually running and even though it's trying to log. So again, in that last case, if it's logging too much and NetSuite's trimming you down, you really need to get with your developer and have them log fewer things. It really, these limits in NetSuite, a lot of them are actually pretty good. They force you to have good habits, and that good habit is don't go log every single thing. Just log basically where you're at. The only unfortunate case would be if you ran a MapReduce, say, on like thousands and thousands of records, and every single record had the same error, and you went and logged, so many errors that NetSuite was like, nope, no more, then you'd lose all those logs. That could happen. You probably won't hit that limit, but that could happen as well. All right. Let us talk about script permissions. So we're not going to go super deep in this, but we need to be aware that these are a thing. And if you're like we are at Vertafore, you deal with audits every single year. So a couple of helpful tips in this as well. So first thing is that these script deployments, some, not all of them, most of them will have this. They have in the script deployment record, and again, the deployment tells you like when is the script running and under what kind of conditions does it run. One of the drop downs you will get is like an execute as role type of thing. And what that basically, the options you get is like administrator or current role, I think. There might be a as owning user, but I think it's this current role or administrator, the two that I'm most familiar with. So execute as administrator is actually really, really valuable. So if you want a user, let's say that you have, in our case, you have like users who are on your support desk, like your billing support desk, and they are allowed to, edit, let's say, invoices and customer payments or something like that. But for audit reasons, you do not want them the ability to edit or create or anything a credit memo. I'm just kind of making this up, but it's kind of the gist of what we have to deal with. But let's say that that user they're in an invoice and they need to do something that really needs to go like create a credit memo or edit a credit memo or do something with a credit memo record, but they don't have permissions because you, the admin, you've assigned their role so that they can't edit credit memos. But you need them to do this one thing with a credit memo. When they click this one thing on an invoice, you can use in the user event script, you can set it to quote unquote execute as admin. So when they click that button and that button executes that user event script, the user event script will have administrative privileges. So it doesn't have the restrictions of, well, you're not allowed to edit a credit memo. It can do whatever you tell it to in the script. So that's a very sharp tool. It can hurt you or it can help you. In general, with us at Vertafore, it helps from an audit because it allows us to restrict down roles and what they have permission to do. And then we can use scripts to do very specific record changes. And then when you're working with your auditors, you just like, yeah, it changes. We have a script that users can't change. And the script is what controls changing these external records. So execute is role, very valuable there. Um, but again, with MapReduce and schedules, they always execute as admin. So that's kind of an interesting nuance, but those also typically are run on a schedule. The audience is another thing. I will be honest with you, we don't use audience that much. So generally with audience, although there is a caveat here, if you deploy a script, generally a user event script, and you do not check one of these boxes or pick things in this audience field, and you save your script and you're like, woo, high five, the script's out, like it's going to start doing this thing. And then like the next day, you start getting reports back that's like, hey, your code doesn't work, man. And you're like, what do you mean? I deployed it. It's out there. Let me go look at the logs. And there's no logs. Chances are really good you forgot to pick an audience for your scripts. So basically what you told your script deployment is you are only going to run if nobody runs you. So on your script deployment, make sure that you pick an audience. In general, I just click all roles. It just depends on which, like your business use might be different. You might want to run a user event script only for the AR role, but not for the AP role or the accounting manager role or something like that. So this audience would be really handy there. And again, the audience side, somebody would have to correct me, but I think this is really only a user event thing. And then a final note on these script permissions, which is also extremely useful with audits, is, when you're going through an audit, your auditors are going to select records and they're going to look to see what changes were made on this record and who made the changes. And one really valuable thing about scripts is that they will generally log in system notes on the record. The user, quote unquote, there'll be a prefix of either bulk processing or script. You'll see one of those two. And that'll be your way of knowing and communicating like, hey, this change was made by a script. And the great thing about that, when working with auditors is system notes you can't change as an administrator. Like system notes are system notes. They just, there's no changing it or setting it, or developers, we as developers in SuiteScript, we can't log system notes. We can't change system notes. Like system notes are immutable. They are just what they are. So these fingerprints in system notes of bulk processing or script are really helpful for identifying which changes happen via a script versus via a user. All right, and some context as well. Yeah, so Roy's mentioning the context of system notes. I'm trying to remember, Roy, I think the context is where this bulk processing or script is too. But yes, the system notes, the context, you will see there's specific fingerprints, and bulk processing and script are the two that I always key on. Okay. Oh, and if you set a script to have permissions as current user, but that user does not actually have permission to edit or create or do whatever your underlying script is trying to do, then the script will fail. So that's another thing worth noting on the execute as role. If you are not running as role administrator, then the script only has permission of that the role you said it has. Alrighty, one more CP. I think we're
Mike,
almost through the. Oh, yep.
let's save this one to the very end.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll
Cool.
we'll pop it back at the end of the meeting.
Got it. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's see. Script execution limits. Oh boy. So in the very beginning of this talk, I'd mentioned you can do anything with scripts, and you generally can with caveats. And here's the page we start talking about the caveats. So every NetSuite developer knows about these things. They just make you want to tear your hair out because you would generally write things a different way had these limits not been there. But you have to change how you do your code because of these limits. So as a administrator or as an executive of a NetSuite system and you're working with a developer and you're like, hey, when they click this button, can you go edit, you just go, modify these like 6,000 records? Your developer is going to be like, going to squirm a little and be like, you can, but now we got to deal with these execution limits. So there's two types of limits here in a script. Any script, by the way, has these limits, or shall I say, every script has these limits. So there's a time limit, which is how long is the script allowed to run, like clock time? And they all have limits, and the limits are all in NetSuite help. So I gave the little help pages if you want to know what they are. I don't remember the specifics off the top of my head, but they all have like how many minutes on the clock is this thing allowed to run until NetSuite native just shuts it down, like you're done. And generally, if these limits are reached, NetSuite, I think it will log a error log of type system, and it'll say something like, time limit exceeded or execution limit exceeded, something, you'll see the word limit in the log. So there's a time limit. I've generally not seen these happen a whole lot, honestly, with the code that I've been in. Usually it's the unit limit. So the unit limit is for those of you who go way, way back with computers, like way, way back when you had like VAX systems and older Unix systems where they were timeshares and you had this concept of like one user, you didn't want them gobbling up the entire processor and starving out all the other users. These systems put in limits where they accounted for how much you use the processor and it would slow you down or shut you down or whatever. Well, NetSuite, somebody at NetSuite who developed this whole scripting infrastructure remembered those days and were like, that was a good idea. We're going to do that in NetSuite. So they have these unit limits. And NetSuite, when they write, they have this whole list of API kind of calls that a NetSuite developer can make and can do. It's our toolkit of sort. And on most of these calls, NetSuite will document and say, if you make this call, it takes 2 units or 5 units or 10 units, or sometimes the units are different depending on whether you're modifying a custom record versus a native NetSuite record. And as a NetSuite developer, you have to be aware that these are a thing, and your developers who've been doing this for a while, they like have already memorized some of these things. They know that, this is 10 units versus 2 units. And it becomes important because when you as the business go to a developer and say, hey, can you go modify these, like a classic case would be an invoice, right? Like when I click submit on an invoice, can you go edit or can you go change or set a value on all the lines on the invoice? And your developer might squirm a little and be like, well, if your invoice has a couple of lines, like maybe a dozen or so, like, yeah, I could probably do that. But if you have an invoice with 200 lines in it, I'm going to run out of execution limit or units because these user event scripts don't have a lot, honestly. Which is my last bullet point, and really a good take home for y'all, especially if you are an executive or a admin and you're wanting to bring a developer in to write scripts to do a thing on any kind of transaction, right? Journals or invoices or sales orders or vendor record or I'm sorry, vendor payments, bill payments, whatever. If you find yourself saying, when you click submit, can you go change all the lines on this thing? The answer is yes. But if you have a lot of lines, your developer is going to run into these limits and have to kind of tap dance around how to do it. It is possible um, through typically tasking out so that the user event would say, huh, looks like I got a lot of lines here. So I'm going to create a scheduled script, a one-time run of a scheduled script, and I'm going to point it at this invoice and tell it to go change all the lines. That's the typical pattern I've seen there. But for you as a business owner, you might scratch your head, be like, why, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why don't you just change it now? Like, I don't understand. And you know, so this is why there's execution limits. They're a real thing. The note here, though, is that MapReduce, which is another reason that most NetSuite developers just love these MapReduces, it's the closest script to being limitless. So in a MapReduce, there are limits, but the limits are basically relegated down to a row level. So like if you fed a MapReduce, you know, a saved search that had 10 rows or 10,000 rows or even a million rows, the way that MapReduce works is it goes row by row and says, okay, for this row, go execute whatever logic. And then for this next row, go execute whatever logic. So the logic you execute on each row is limited, you know, it has these unit limits, but the number of rows you process is basically unlimited. Um, the time limits, I think I've seen, I don't even remember if I've seen a time limit on a MapReduce. So that the MapReduces can just go on and on and on and process a whole bunch of data. And what it does to each row in the data, it's pretty liberal in how many units you have. So you will find if you the business or you the admin, ask your developer to run a scheduled script to do these things on these rows, they're probably going to run a MapReduce. If they write a scheduled script, it'll probably work until it runs out of units, and then you might, well, actually the scheduled scripts are pretty level there too, but you, you know, it's just the MapReduce really is the closest to limitless. And the user events are very limited. So you just want to reiterate that again, because you will be frustrated by these limits even when you're not a developer. Okay. And there is a way, by the way, that developers can write inside of their code. They can figure out if they're getting quote unquote close to the limit. So there's a way for the developer to ask NetSuite, like, hey, how am I doing? How many do I have left? And some developers do that, and they do this fancy footwork of like, I'm almost done, so I got to go task myself out again to do the rest of the rows. Like you see that stuff going on. It's silly, but sometimes it's a necessity. All right, MapReduce concurrency. This is another thing that makes MapReduces amazingly awesome. But for you as a admin or a business owner, you need to be aware of this because this comes up at contract renewal time when you are working with NetSuite. So MapReduces can run in parallel. So the basic gist there is if you have, I think they call them Suite Cloud licenses. But when you buy these Suite Cloud licenses, they show up on a MapReduce script deployment under this concurrency limit drop down. And what concurrency limit basically is I want to run this custom business logic on every row of a saved search or a data set or SQL, whatever, but on all these records, but I want it to be fast, right? So with the concurrency limit, what that says, what your developer or you can even dial in here is say at any point in time, go do the same logic on in this dropdown one row at a time. So like if you picked one, the script would run on the first row, and then when that's done, it would run on the next row, and when that's done, and so on and so on, so forth. But if you pick a concurrency limit of 2 or more, that changes the game. It says, okay, at any point in time, like go get the first 2 rows and run those in parallel. And whoever finishes first, then they get the third row. And then, you kind of do this dovetail. So if you have, say, 10 processors, you're working on 10 different rows all at the exact same instant in time. And then when a processor frees up, it goes and grabs the next row. So you're always working on 10 rows at a time. Let's say if you said your concurrency limit of 10. And obviously, if you were to zoom all the way out, you'd be like, wow, I got a 10x improvement in performance in this thing because it runs 10 times faster because I click concurrency of 10 instead of 1. So concurrency is really important. It's only a MapReduce thing. And I have generally found that I use it in combination with priority. Um, oh, and by the way, let's say that you have, and some vendors might do this where, and you need to be aware of this if this concurrency is a thing. If you add a bundle or you get a bundle update, sometimes the vendors, when they push the bundle update, they will go change the concurrency limit of their scripts to be the maximum number of processors in your system. Like with every bundle update, we have a particular bundle that does this. So, that's not great because they might not need the max number of CPUs. They may only need 1 or 2. So, be aware of that. If you're in this world of like managing CPU usage and MapReduces, that your bundles that have their own MapReduces, you can change their concurrency limit, by the way. You do have permission to do that, and you should. You'll know if you should, if like things are running slow and all this. So concurrency limit priority basically says, if you had 2 MapReduce scripts that both want to use 2 processors and you only have 2 processors, well, which one gets to run first? And the answer is, well, the one with the higher priority. So you can use priority, and priority is just basically like high, medium, low kind of thing. I think they call it high, standard, low. So priority I use conceptually to just say like for instance, with our monthly billing script, high priority, baby. Like that one takes the top. But we have these other scripts that run and they like go and update records for something something so that if we need to run a report like at end of month, like always I set at low priority. They crunch through a bunch of records, so those low priorities I might set at a higher concurrency, but I set them at a lower priority because it's okay if you don't run right now. I've got things that are higher priority to run. So again, MapReduce, these two are really useful for just really fine-tuning how fast things will run and what runs when. A real basic rule of thumb, though, is if you only have 2 processors, you're only going to be able to run 2 at the same time, 2 threads across these different scripts. So for instance, if you had 2 processors and you had 2 different MapReduce scripts and you set each of those at a concurrency of 1, yes, those 2 scripts could run at exactly the same moment in time, each of them taking 1 processor, and they would run in parallel. So you have to kind of do that kind of math and thinking when you are scheduling these. But this also for, as an executive, it makes it where you can basically write a check and make your system faster. Because that's another thing. If you're like the executive type and you're like, this thing is slow, this is driving me crazy, and it's like, we don't want to go hire a developer to quote unquote make it faster, just write a check, buy more Sweet Cloud processors, bump this limit up to faster on the MapReduces, it'll run faster. All right, I think we had some comments in here, Rory. Let's see. Yep. So Rory has a favorite search for finding execution timeouts. So that is worth noting there. And Rory also mentions around the Sweet Cloud Plus licensing where to find it, looks like, or priority settings. Yeah, and I think Rory, those priority settings, I don't know if those do those do MapReduce as well? I thought they just did scheduled scripts.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that third-party bundles tend to execute on a specific
Queue.
queue, and I religiously mark them not to run on specific queues.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the queues, what I've generally found for everybody, and Rory, you might be a little more knowledgeable than I am here, but I can't say like there really are no queues on MapReduces. Queues were another one of those, like when NetSuite started, the queues were a thing, and they were a way of they're actually really helpful in CSV imports. If y'all have seen these in CSV imports, they're a way of sequencing the execution of something. So like if you said like, hey, I've got these, 4 scheduled scripts and I want them to run like or I want to run this one scheduled script 4 different times, let's say on 4 different searches or whatever, you could use a queue. You could say like put them all in the same queue and it'd go run, 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 run. And because we're on the same queue, they'll just run in sequence. But if you put them in different queues, this is actually a better tip and trick for CSVs. If you do like your CSV imports on different queues, they'll run in parallel. So yes, there is the queuing for scripts, but I think that's only scheduled scripts. And I guess I'm not as, versed in scheduled scripts because to me, like, why would you do a scheduled script when you could do a MapReduce? All righty. Yeah, and Christian's saying definitely helpful to have the multiple concurrencies. Yes. All right. All right. So the next thing we'll talk about here, this kind of the tail end. I guess I'm almost right on time here. So on performance, this is something that I use again on our billing cycle. Just be aware that this exists. So if you're in that world of, hey, the script is slow. So this happens with every script. Hey, the script is slow. And some of your developers might be like, oh, I'm going to go do this fancy code, this, that, and the other. I've been this developer, by the way, but now I feel like I'm old and crusty and I don't anymore. Like, there's 2 ways of figuring out why a script is slow. The first, which I would recommend, is you go pull data. Like you go figure out like, well, I don't know, what's actually happening. And the answer to that question you can find in this NetSuite app called the Advanced Performance Management Tool, or APM. NetSuite, everybody calls it APM. So it's a free suite app that NetSuite native, Oracle publishes. And it looks like this. You'll see something that looks like this. And this helps you get the answer of like, hey, let's not guess here. What is the script actually doing, right? This script tells you that, or this APM bundle. So that's the good news. It kind of helps you to give that answer. The bad news is it's not super intuitive as to like what is it actually doing, especially from the lens of like what specific part of my code is running slow. That is not really super obvious. So what will be obvious in this APM bundle is which script is running slow. That's actually helpful. We have found before where we thought our MapReduce was slow, but it turns out our MapReduce was saving a record as it should have, but a user event from one of our vendors was running slow. And like again, this is why it's very important philosophically when you have something running slow, you have that scenario, don't go slinging code at it. Like, don't go like, oh, I think it's this search needs to be faster, or I've got this loop in my code that could be no, stop, no, full stop. Go look at the data in the APM and just make sure that that is actually the script that is running slow. That's just, battle tested advice from me to you as a developer to you as a non-developer, because me, the junior developer, would have been like, oh yeah, it's probably this, that, and the other. Let me go changing code. Because I think we all know that once you start changing code, you introduce the risk of breaking something. So don't change code. Go get APM. Spend some time in it. So you as a non-developer, this will be helpful for you. But you just kind of got to figure out um, how to use it. Roy had mentioned here, which I would agree with you, Roy, that the summary pages are really good in APM. One of the things that they do tell you, which I think I have here, is they tell you which searches are running slow. And that's really helpful, especially if your script is running a search. So APM, highly recommended. Definitely start at the summaries. That will probably be all the answers you need. You can dive in by clicking these bars. They will eventually get you to your, just think of a top down kind of like just the biggest bar, and then just keep clicking and diving down. Yeah, Roy gave a little screenshot there. But the other thing is philosophically, just please don't go slinging code at slow. Like, take metrics first. I've learned that over many, many years. Okay, learning more. So if you want to learn more of it, so now we kind of get in the wrap up stage, but like, learning more about like, I want to write code. Like, because some of you are probably very tech savvy admins and you're ready to make that next jump. I've definitely had people who've reached out to me and who I've provided guidance in this very kind of world. Like, I'm ready to be that next step, that developer. Where do I even get started? This is the place. Like the NetSuite user guide, and I point NetSuite user guides for just about everything NetSuite if you really want to get started. My go-to place as a developer is I go to help, and I usually search for n/record or some module that I know, but it gives you this list of all of the APIs that are possible in SuiteScript 2.0. Another note, I did not say this earlier, but it's worth saying here, do not write any new NetSuite 1.0 code. So like it all really needs to be 2.0 or really 2.1. 2.0 and 2.1 are almost the same thing. 2.1 actually runs faster, is what we found, because NetSuite in the back end uses a different engine to run the code. And when we at Vertafore made the jump from 2.0 to 2.1, it was noticeably faster. So if you, and the 2.1 engine will run 2.0 code, the 2.0 engine will not always run 2.1 code. So that's the thing to know. There's that kind of thing. But you as an admin, like, there is a setting under, I think, general preferences that says something like run 2.x, or it's basically which engine do you want to use by default. And if you click at the 2.1, you might find two things. One is things run a whole lot faster, and two is maybe some scripts start to break. But for sure, as you're hiring a developer kind of thing, uh, no new no new code that's 1.0. That should just be a non-starter. Editing existing 1.0s, yeah, sometimes you have to do that, but just no new code in there. All right. Another little helpful tip, recently changed scripts. So this is another like, oh, this is really good from an audit perspective. This search I've run for years and it's really helpful, which is like, did somebody change the script? And this is it. Like, take the screenshot, go create the search. So I set this search as a I want to say I think I'd do it as a scheduled save search, but you can also do it as an instant. It is a search on the file cabinet. So documents, I think, is the search type. And this is super kind of cryptic, but it does the job. So basically you're saying, if anything changed in this file today, where the file is, a JavaScript file, then tell me about it. It won't tell you what changed. Unfortunately, NetSuite is very poor at that. That's why you use a tool called Git, which is outside of NetSuite, but all of your developers will want to use it. But it will tell you that something did change, and that's really valuable. Generally, what you should see is the changes come through when your developers change something, or you should see these come through when bundles update. And Roy, you say yes for caveats. So what are the caveats on this one? Okay, so he says, all right, so maybe those are the caveats is the bundles changing versus your dev. Oh, and then if the bundles change, sometimes it shows the person who changed the bundle was whoever installed the bundle, which is a little confusing in the search. But this is another really good one, especially if you guys are dealing with audits. Really, if you're not dealing with audits, you just have multiple consultants or contractors or multiple developers even in your system, and you care about change control, this is a good one to have.
Mike, I
Yes.
think Roy was answering a question I had.
Oh,
That
okay.
if you can run scripts, I have scripts that I wrote years and years ago in 1.0, and if I now start writing in 2 point something, will my 1.0 script still run?
Oh, and yes, they
That's what he
will.
was responding to.
Yep.
Yes, with caveats. I have no idea what the caveats are.
Yeah, they can coexist, and
Yeah.
what you'll see, Margie, is that you can't. There's new ways of doing things that you can't do in like
Yep.
1.0. So, and you'll see that. But
Yep.
they can coexist. You can do one. We have 1, 2, 0, 2.1, and 2x. So we run the gamut here.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure 1.0 scripts are one of those things that a lot of people inside of Oracle want to kill, but they know they'll never be able to do it because there are so many customers who have legacy 1.0 scripts. In fact, they just released, there is a NetSuite, I think it came out with the latest NetSuite version, and those of y'all, Corey and Margie, y'all might remember this, where they broke their own 1.0 scripts. Um, and it came through with the sticky notes bundle or something like that. Like all kinds of people were like, "Do y'all remember this?"
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that was just
Ye-
recently.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. And it took them, I think, a couple weeks to get it
yeah,
fixed.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So Matthew asked, what exactly is 2.x versus 2.0 or 2.1? Yeah. So Matthew, this is a great question. And I realize I'm right at 11 o'clock. So there are three specific versions of scripts. There's 1.0, 2.0, 2.1. However, and the version, so your developer, when they write a script, a 2.0 or a 2.1 script, when they write a script, they have to put in the script this, it's actually formatted as a comment, but they have to put this keyword in the script to tell NetSuite, hey, NetSuite, this is a 2.0 script, or hey, NetSuite, this is a 2.1 script, or the developer can say, hey, NetSuite, this is a 2.x script, meaning it can be 2.1 or 2.0, I don't care, it'll run either way. So that's what 2.x means. It's where the developer, when they write the script, they hint to NetSuite that this can run under either engine. Because you as an admin under general preferences, you can go and say like, if it says 2.x, here's the engine I want you to use. But if you don't change that setting, that's okay. NetSuite, when it reads this little hint, it'll say like, oh, this is a 2.0 script. Okay, I need to use the 2.0 engine to run this thing. Or, oh, this is a 2.1 script. I need to go run the 2.1 engine to run this thing. And again, my personal experience has been the 2.1 engine is definitely faster than the 2.0 engine. So that's kind of the difference. There is some syntactical difference. The version of JavaScript, strictly speaking, the version of the language that 2.1 is compliant to is a more modern version. So there's more capabilities that a developer can use. most notably for me is you can use backticks to do multi-line strings versus line by line saying string plus equal, string plus equal. And for you developers in there and didn't know that, you'll be like, that is life-changing. So there's some syntactical differences in 2.1 that you don't have in 2.0 as a developer. All right, final point here I'll breeze through. I realize I'm running over is there's a thing, just be aware, called a script debugger. So if you're in the boat that you're now an executive, like maybe you were a developer long ago and you've since gone into like you're an exec or admin or whatever, you don't write code, but you just remember these things were a thing. Where it's like, isn't there a thing where you can like go step through code and you can see it line by line as it's running? The answer is yes. NetSuite does have this. It's called Script Debugger. You can find it under page Script Debugger with caveats. The Script Debugger only runs on certain script types. So primarily user event, which is the most helpful, honestly. It runs on Sweetlets. It runs on mass updates. I don't think it runs under scheduled scripts. But it definitely does not run on MapReduce. So that's a sad trombone for most developers because MapReduce is a really powerful script you use all the time, but you cannot use Script Debugger with MapReduces. But it allows a developer to step through and see what's happening with the code line by line. It's really valuable. NetSuite has maintained this and actually improved it over time. And the other thing worth noting is for a script to run under Script Debugger, that status check or drop down that we covered earlier in the talk, you have to select the status of testing. Otherwise, it won't show up in Script Debugger. All right. That's it.
So we have one more final polling question. I'm going to go ahead and launch that real quick for the CPE questions. So that's our final polling question. I know you had it earlier in the slide, but it is, can scripts modify records on behalf of a user, even if that user does not have edit permissions to that record type? Can scripts modify records on behalf of a user, even if that user does not have edit permission to that record type? About 20 seconds left for our last question. Last polling question, last chance. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll now. And the answer is?
Answer is yes. So scripts can edit records even though the user doesn't have permission. So key there is, which we discussed earlier on the script deployment record, you can tell the script to run as administrator, in which case it has administrative privileges. All right, well, thank you, everybody. It was fun. If you have any questions, want to reach out directly, my email is mkachline@gmail. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for attending. And I'll give it back to you, Corey.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. Great presentation and tons of great information. At this point, we're going to turn it over to Ryan for our tip and trick of the day, which will involve a little bit of AI and some scripting stuff. So Ryan, we'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Good job, Mike. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen and show you guys a few tips that I've been using. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Awesome. I have, let's see, I'll put this chat over here. I have my NetSuite here on the right-hand side, and I have ChatGPT here on the left-hand side. I've been using ChatGPT to help me learn about scripts that are in NetSuite, learn how to write scripts, modify scripts, and yeah, I'm not a developer, And so I'm just sharing some tools and some prompts that have helped me along the way. So if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. But for now, I'm going to show you guys what I do, and we'll go from there. So inside of NetSuite, whenever I want to learn about a script, or I'm writing a script and I need a little bit of help, I'll go into customization, scripting, scripts, and I'll have my list of scripts here. If I want to learn about a specific one, you can go and view any of the scripts like Mike was showing earlier. I have a specific script that I'm going to learn about here. It's my button example. So I click into my script, and in this script tab here, I can click and preview my script. So you can do this with any script in your system. It will show you the code. You know, sometimes you might know what it is, but most of the time you don't. So I'm going to grab a prompt, which I've been using. It's not too complicated. And I'm going to paste it into ChatGPT. So I'm going to say, what does this script do? I'm going to highlight my entire script, copy it, and paste it right after that prompt. And let's see what ChatGPT tells us. So this is a NetSuite user event script designed to add a button to a NetSuite form. So it kind of breaks up the script a little bit and tells me kind of step by step in the different modules and the main functions of it. And I've been using it to learn the different sections of a script, as well as to help me write different parts and different scripts. And it goes pretty in depth. You know, I'm not going to read through all of this, but ultimately it adds a button to a form inside of NetSuite. So it goes through and gives a really, really detailed description and a summary at the bottom. Maybe I don't need it to be that complicated. So sometimes I put in my favorite prompt into here, which is explain it to me like a 5-year-old, which, you know, isn't that helpful sometimes, but I like to put it in just to see what it says. And it says, imagine you're using a special computer program, like a super fancy website that people can see. This script is a set of instructions we give to that website telling it what to do. The main thing is put a magic button on the screen. So that's what I'm going to take from this. And maybe, you know, maybe it's a little simplified for me. I'll put in another prompt here, which is explain it to me as if I've used NetSuite for 10 days as a new user. So I'll put in that prompt here. And it still breaks down the script for me, but it doesn't do it as simple as the 5-year-old prompt. And it does it a little bit more simplified than the very beginning one, which is what does this script do? So it tells me that it's a script, it's loading certain modules, it's adding in a button, it's grabbing a custom field, and it's also adding logging for debugging. So we can see that in the scripted records section, the debug logs. Adding a button here, and any type of error handling as well. So if I run this script, it looks like this. It's on our project record, and it's just coincidentally, it's a ChatGPT button. So it's adding this button to this project record. If I click on the button, it opens ChatGPT, which might be convenient for your users or not. And I've also used ChatGPT to update and edit scripts, use at your own discretion. And let's see what prompt I use for that. So maybe I want to update this script to change the website that this button goes to, or to change the label of the button. So I'm going to put in a new prompt here that says, update this script to change the website to LinkedIn. So what it's going to do is it's going to update the script for me, which is pretty nice. It takes just a second here. I can go back into my script. And once this is done writing it out, I can click copy the code. I can go and edit my script. Again, use this at your own discretion. I'll highlight all of this, paste in my new code, hit save. Hopefully it saves for you. I'm going to go back to my project record where I know the button is, and we can see what changes come. We'll give it an hour for it to load. Just kidding. So there's my new button here, which shows LinkedIn instead of ChatGPT. If I click on the button, it loads my LinkedIn. And so the updates changed for me based on a new prompt in ChatGPT, which is nice. It also tells me what was changed. And then we can go test it out like we just did. A few other prompts kind of mentioned earlier in Mike's presentation that I've used. A prompt that I use quite often when I'm writing a script with ChatGPT and testing it in Sandbox is add debug logs to my script at each step. So when I put that in, every single step of my script, it adds in my debug logs. So we have one here, we have one here, and it just goes through every part of your script and adds in the debug logs so I can show that each step is working, or if something is breaking, I can kind of see where it is breaking in my script. And then I can use the reverse prompt when I'm all done. So I can say remove the debug logs. Like Mike said, it kind of limits you at some point. So I use that prompt when I'm testing new scripts, and it tells me every single debug log that was added, which is really nice. And then the last prompt that I like to use if I'm learning about new scripts or testing out new scripts, and I've already asked all these questions and I still don't know what's going on, I can ask ChatGPT, what are other prompts that I can use to learn about this script? So ChatGPT will tell me a list of other prompts that it can answer to learn about my scripts inside of NetSuite. So exploring basics, learning about each line of code, ask about form customizations, logging, debugging, so on and so forth. So those are some of the prompts that I use to learn about the scripts, to modify the scripts, and there's plenty more prompts as well. Be careful of what I think is called AI I don't know the word. AI messing up and just making up stuff. So make sure you're testing inside of NetSuite and try not to break it. That is all I have for
All
the
right.
tips and tricks.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. That's really great stuff. And I think, Ryan said it many times, use at your own risk and be careful, but, with great power comes great responsibility. So just be careful what you're using those for. Thanks a lot for that, Ryan. And thanks again, Mike. And thanks again, Saligo, for sponsoring our meeting today. So at this point, we're going to move into our open forum. So I'll stop recording real quick.